welcome to Sometimes in Shambles. My name is Melissa. This is my podcast. Today's episode is going to be on anxiety and a little bit of just mental health in general. And today I have another guest, and it is my friend Brittany.
Hi, everyone.
So me and Brittany went to school together at SUU. We were both graphic designers together. So today's episode is going to be about mental health, a little bit more focused on anxiety. Brittany's going to tell us her story about how she got diagnosed and kind of realized that she had struggled with mental health.
Yes.
There we go. And I'll tell a little bit about my background, but I think I'll also do another episode of just me talking about my experiences. And then we'll talk about what anxiety looks like for us and how it's different for everyone and sometimes hard to identify, or sometimes it's really noticeable. The definition of anxiety, this is just a definition that I found on the internet. It says, anxiety is your body's natural response to stress. It's a feeling of fear or apprehension about what's to come. I think there's a lot more that goes into that definition.
Yeah.
My therapist, the main thing that I'm in therapy for is my anxiety. And my therapist described it just as anticipation of not being able to not knowing what's coming and not being able to handle what's coming, because you just create scenarios that are the worst things possible and you don't know how to deal with that, even though it's not real yet. Mm-hmm. So anticipation is the huge word that my therapist uses a lot. But yeah, what do you think the definition is?
Well, so it's really interesting because there are a lot of different forms of anxiety. And for you, yours is the anticipation. Mine is more of the social anxiety aspect. And that's basically a constant excess fear of being judged, really being in any situation where you could be humiliated or embarrassed. And personally for me, getting any sort of attention, either in crowds or just in general attention, it brings out the worst. It is very hard for me to, anyway. But yeah, everyday interactions with people can cause an unreasonable amount of anxiety for me. It makes work really hard, making work friends. I don't talk to hardly anyone at work because I think they just think I'm kind of shut in or a grumpy lady. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it makes everyday life a little bit harder.
Yeah, and you did mention that there's different kinds of anxiety, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later also, because there are situations, where I have social anxiety, and the story I was telling you earlier, which I'll probably mention, was that fear of being judged, or they're thinking something about me or talking about me or whatever that is. Yeah, so that's an overview of kind of what anxiety is, because it's actually really surprising to me when I run into people that have never experienced it, because I feel everyone experiences it at some point. Mm-hmm. But the last guy I dated, he's I don't know what that is. He knew what it was, but he's just I've never dealt with that, so I don't know what you're going through. And I'm just how have you never experienced anxiety? It's such, it's everywhere, anything can cause it. So can't relate. I don't know what it's like to not have anxiety. Okay, so we'll kind of get into our stories and how we discovered that we had anxiety, or when we recognized it, I guess. So I'll go first. Mine is pretty short. For me, I was diagnosed with depression in high school, or right after high school, and I never really was I experienced anxiety. I never knew that I had it or anything, and it wasn't until around 2014 I was on the phone with my mom, and I think this was a point where I was changing my major, or trying to figure out, I don't know what I was doing, but it was something related to school, and I was telling my mom about it, and she was just not helping. She was trying to help, but was kind of just saying you have to decide on your own, and I just couldn't handle that. And I started freaking out, and like I couldn't breathe, and like my mom just hung up with me because she couldn't like understand what I was saying or anything, and I wasn't even like coherent. Like I didn't even know that she was like on the phone, like, or when, like I knew she was on the phone, but like just wasn't realizing what was going on.
Moment.
Yeah. So she hung up, and I was just like started crying like uncontrollably, and I remember just pacing back and forth like from my room to the bathroom, and was just breathing like really weird, like hyperventilating almost. And then I remember like sitting by the toilet because I thought I was gonna throw up, and like I just couldn't control anything that was happening to me. And I realized after, like when I had calmed down, that it was a panic attack, but I had never had one before. So that was like the first time that I was like, okay, this can happen to me, kind of thing. But I still, for a couple of years after that, I wasn't like, oh, I have anxiety, and I didn't know triggers. I didn't recognize it or anything like that. And it wasn't until our senior year that I was like, I have anxiety, like about so many things. Yeah. And then I think once you realize that you have anxiety, looking back, that's kind of how I determined my triggers. And I was like, okay, yes, like relationships are triggers, because like this scenario was actually anxiety in this scenario, and it was because of this. And like it's so much easier to identify that stuff. So that's kind of how I realized it, but I've never been diagnosed with it like by a doctor, but I started going to therapy just for everything, and kind of like mentioned it, and she like validated it. So it's not like a made up thing that I have. And that's like the main thing that I talk about in therapy. But yeah, that's my little short story. But I'm excited to talk about yours because it's just like so different. And yeah,
it is. It's like one of the things I love. Like I don't love mental health, but one of the things I find so fascinating is just how different everyone is. Like no person's thing or situation is ever the same. So I was diagnosed with depression when I was 14. And I believe that there were a lot of contributing factors. One of which was, at the time, there were just a ton of people leaving my life in unexpected ways. Like my great grandma had passed away, my grandpa had passed away, my uncle had passed away, my dad was in prison, my brother was on his mission, my other brother was getting his associates in school, so he was never around, or in high school, so he was never around. And my mom was a single mom, so she was out dating and stuff, which just left me alone a lot of the time and kind of felt like I didn't have anyone. Also, my dad, he was I believe a major part in why I have depression. He was a good dad for most of the time. But after my parents got divorced, he got into this terrible, terrible state of mind. He was a closet alcoholic, basically. He was like selling drugs in the house when me and my little brother were there, and he just let it control his life, and he did not care for me and my little brother, which just made me feel like I was worthless, like I wasn't worth caring about, because my dad decided to choose those things over me. All of those things together basically just put me in a place where I was like angry all the time, like anything set me off. I was like a rebellious teen, basically, and I was just always mad all the time. And my mom was the one who thought that I should go to the doctor and like see what was going on. So we went in, and I was just so pissed off. I sat in the doctor's room with my arms crossed, looking down, like hair hanging in front of my face, and the doctor was trying to talk to me, and he was trying to ask me questions like how I've been feeling lately, like is there a reason why I'm so mad? I just wasn't saying anything. So he then told me, he's like, well, I think that you have depression. And at the time, I didn't really know what it was, but I knew it was a bad thing, or it was like it was just going to make things harder. And I just started crying my eyes out because I knew it was not good news. It was really hard. Yeah, I didn't like it. And even after that, like they gave me medication and stuff, but I was 14. I didn't know how to take medicine consistently. So after I was diagnosed with depression, my mom helped me. She's a big support and like making sure that I was taken care of, basically. I went and saw a therapist, and that was probably the greatest thing I've ever done. It set me back on track, and I basically got my life back. I also like found ways to channel my depression in a way. Like I taught myself how to play guitar, and I would just spend hours every single day playing and learning different songs, writing my own songs. And I also found To Write Love on Her Arms. Shout out. They are an amazing organization that is very supportive of mental health and getting people the help that they need. So I did not have anxiety until about 9th grade. Well, I'd say I didn't realize I had it until 11th grade, but like you said, looking back, I can tell exactly like when it started, how I got it. So I was dating this kid named Alex, and he was a really terrible person. We started dating. He didn't really like my friends. He told me to choose him or my friends, and of course, because I was dumb, I chose him. And he was a very questionable guy from the very beginning. Like, he always bragged about all the drugs that he did and all the people that he hung out with, like all like at the time were like smoked weed and stuff. And it got to the point where like I was just really uncomfortable, and he always was comparing me to his ex-girlfriends.
That's so messed up. I freaking hate that so much.
He had pictures of like naked pictures of his ex-girlfriends on his phone, and would be like, oh yeah, like look, this is one of them, like this is one girl I dated and her boobs were this big and yours are only this big. Like it was a very like toxic relationship. He also, like, as we got further into the relationship, he started to get really abusive and would like hit me with towels. He held a knife up to my throat. We would play the car game where like you'd punch someone if you see a yellow car. And to him, I feel it was more than a game, because he would leave bruises all over me because of it. It started to get pretty bad, to the point where I would just come home and cry my eyes out. And I think the time when I realized I needed help was when a teacher pulled me aside and talked to me about sex, basically. And she's like, hey, I heard that you and Alex like had sex, and like, you know, you have to get checked for like these kind of things. And I was just like, first off, how did you find out? Like, yeah. So I came home crying my eyes out. My mom came in, and I told her everything that was going on. And just, she's very supportive, like my mom always is. And I asked her if I could use her as an excuse as like for breaking up with Alex. And she's like, absolutely, like, please do. We hate that guy. So used her as an excuse, told Alex that my mom no longer wanted us dating, and word got out that it was a lie and that I was just the one that wanted to end things. And because of that, he started spreading so many rumors about me around the school, saying that like I had slept with multiple people, I had done these kinds of drugs, and it was so bad.
Which, yeah, like think about those rumors being spread about you right now. It's horrible. In high school, that's
even worse.
So bad.
Yeah. I feel like, because like as you get older, you can be like, yeah, not a big deal, whatever, I'm gonna go on with my life.
Not
but
true.
Like in high school, that's like what you build your life off of, basically. And like the people that I was acquaintances with in the halls would say hi to, they no longer said hi to me. They didn't even acknowledge me, because they didn't know if the rumors were true or not. basically because like I chose Alex over my friends, which by the way, my friends took me back because they're amazing.
Choose good friends.
Yeah, choose good friends. Lesson number 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, because of that, I lost a lot of people who could have been really good friends. As I went into high school, into 10th grade, I really only had one friend because no one hung out with me. Like, they still just didn't know if these things were true or not. And no one ever cared to confront me and like ask me about it. So I had one friend and I ate lunch with her every single day. Some days she would eat lunch with her other friends and I would join along, but I would just be in the background, not saying anything. I would just eat my food quietly. And at that time, my mom was dating this guy and they eventually got married and they both worked up in West Jordan. And so, and he also lived up there. And I told my mom one day, I was like, hey, I know that you guys drive up there every day, like, and Frank has a house up there. Would it be so bad if we moved up there? And my mom was like, oh yeah, totally. Like, we were only staying down here because you were going to school. We didn't want you to change schools. And I was like, oh, well, that is fine by me. If I can get a fresh start, that would be awesome. However, when I started at my new school, in my head, I felt like everyone knew those rumors that were spread about me in my other school. There's no possible way that they would find out, but because I just lived in constant fear that like everyone knew everything about me, it transferred to that other school and I still couldn't make any friends. My parents forced me to be friends with the girl that I lived across the street with.
Was this still in 9th grade or this was
this is 11th grade now, yeah. But that's when I realized that I have a problem with talking to people and being in situations, like even just doing this, like the idea that people are going to listen to it freaks me out.
Believe me,
yeah. But so I moved schools, ate lunch alone every single day. I made some friends in my classes, like the people I sat next to, but other than that, I kept my head down. I didn't talk to anyone. And like, it was even hard for me to go out in public and talk to people. Like, if me and my little brother were out eating somewhere and I needed ketchup, I could not go up and ask the cashier for ketchup. I had to have like I don't even know how old he was, my 5-year-old brother do it. Like, it sucks. And it's still hard today, but it's definitely more manageable as you get older and, like you said, realize what your triggers are and all of that. How I deal with it today, I am on medication, specifically for depression and anxiety, but I also have medicine specifically for anxiety to lower my heart rate.
So is it, because I've never been on medication for anxiety. I've only been on medication for depression, and like, is it one pill that you take that are for both, or are they two separate pills?
So the one that I have is for depression and anxiety, more so for depression, but it also helps with anxiety. And then there's a separate one that my doctor basically said, like, take it when you need it.
Okay.
Yeah. Short side story. I ran out of my medication probably like 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't take it for about a week. And the medication that I'm on, if you just stop cold turkey, you will have major ups and downs. And there was I think it was day 3 that I didn't have it, and I was at work and I couldn't even get a sentence out of my mouth without crying. Even just the thought, while I was at work, even just the thought of why can't you talk right now made me cry. And it's just little things set me off. And then a few days later, had been 5 or 6 days, and I got to the point where I would could snap at anyone. I was like very early on with my depression, I was on edge all the time. I was annoyed with every little thing that anyone did, and I was just mad constantly. But yeah, I had to call my doctor. He got it refilled, and it all is well. Another thing that I do to deal with my mental health is because I've been dealing with it for so long, it's really, really easy for me to talk about it and be open about it. And I think it was senior year of college that I really started to embrace it and just be like, yeah, this is who I am, and like I'm not alone in this whole situation.
I think that was the same for me.
Yeah. And I base a lot of my college work off of the idea that I wanted to like make it a normal thing. I wanted people to talk about it. So we took a web design class together, and I created a website about anxiety and depression. And it's not like sad or scary to talk about. My idea behind it was to just make it
like
not
welcoming.
Welcoming and not scary, and just be like, hey, like this is something that happens sometimes. This is something that people have to go through. And
that website's like one of my favorite things that you've done.
I know, mine too.
I love it.
It's so cute.
Yeah.
And then my senior BFA show was solely based around what it feels like to have a mental disease. And it was kind of funny because there were people that would walk by and be like, oh, this is too depressing. Like, I can't look at this. And other people would, like, someone came up to our professor, Jeff, and they were just like, is this student getting help?
Oh, no, I didn't know that. Oh, my gosh.
He was just like, oh, yeah, she's fine.
Oh, my gosh. Which I honestly think your show was, like, the, like, best one. Like, it was, like, people stopped. You know what I mean? Like, everything else was kind of, no offense to anybody who's listening to this, whatever. I'm like, I'm bashing on my own project too, but I don't know. Everyone else is like, okay, like project. And then yours was just like a great display. Like it was huge.
It was so
and there
big.
was like a lot to look at. It was all cohesive. Like, I think it was like really well done.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. But I tried to reach like every single mental health category, I guess you would say. And there were people that were so into it, and they were like, yeah, I know, like I sent a picture of this to someone and they were like, yeah, that's exactly how it feels. Mm-hmm. And so it was really just like, it was really nice to know that I was able to touch people and actually like connect with so many people because I knew their story. I didn't really know their story, but in a way I did, because I tried so hard to make every single poster perfect. Like I created a online survey that was anonymous that allowed people to really tell me how they were feeling and like what mental illness they had. So like I didn't do it all on my own. I got a lot of help from a lot of different people so I could make sure I got every single one spot on. Another thing, another way I deal with it is my dog Millie. When I was a junior in college, I almost failed my last semester of school because I was in such a low place. I wasn't taking medication. I stayed in my room all day. I was not friends with any of my roommates, and I didn't go to class. I just did nothing. It got to the point where I just stopped taking care of myself, and I was like, I need to care about something. And so I got my dog. She was 3 months old, and I know some people probably think like, if you can't take care of yourself, why are you getting a dog? But for me, it was like, I cannot let this dog die. I can't let it starve. I can't let it get fat. Like, my dog is my reason for living at that time. Yeah. And so it's like, I need to care about something. I'll care about Millie. And she's been the greatest little thing I've ever had in my life. She is so wonderful. She is kind of getting chubby though.
But yeah, I think that's like that's like really like responsible thing, I think, like to realize, I mean, not to get like so deep, but to realize like you're in that state of mind where like you literally need a reason for you to be alive, and like for you to take action and be like, getting a dog is going to like, I'm going to care about it so much that I'm not going to want to like not exist anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like really smart to do that.
Yeah. Smart and kind of dumb because I'm a college student.
I remember.
I was a freelance designer at the time, so it's like, I don't know where I'm going to get money.
I remember one day in Mitch's class, you like came in, I don't know what it was. You were late or something, and then you're like, sorry, like I just got a puppy and she ran away and I had to go chase her and like all this stuff.
Yeah. You also remember when I came in and I like put my hands down, there were just like bite marks and scratch marks, and you were like, what happened? I was like, I got a dog.
Okay, so I'm excited about this next question. What does anxiety feel like? How do you know it's coming on or recognize it? Differences between anxiety and depression. And I'm excited about this because it's so different for everybody. And also I remember I was talking to a friend who had listened to my depression episode, and she had said something about how like it's so hard to distinguish between anxiety and depression. And for me, it's not similar. Like it's very different. Oh, but some of the things that I was going to say earlier are like some of the things that you were saying, like short-tempered and just like angry and stuff like that. My like first years of college and kind of in high school too, I would just snap so easily. And like my mom would just say something and I literally ran away one time because I was just mad at one thing my mom said. And I would always slam doors, and my family like knew that I was like a time bomb like that, and it kind of became like a joke to them to like push buttons.
That's so terrible.
With me. Yeah. But I think it's like, cause I never realized like, okay, that's like mental health, and I didn't know any of that. And that's why I think it's important to talk about it, because if I had known that, then I could have told my family, and it wouldn't have been such a like, okay, like go slam a door, you know, like, and become a joke, which triggered me and made me more mad. So like talking about it really does help, and let your friends and family know this is bothering you, this triggered me, this is why I'm feeling this way, or, you know, like whatever it is. I think it's really important to let people know so it doesn't keep happening and put you in a situation that you become triggered.
Yeah.
Also, we've been saying triggered a lot, and I've never actually explained that, because I'm going to have a mini-sode on triggers specifically, but just to explain it, because I think the word triggered has become like kind of like a joke in society, like especially like YouTube culture, like things like that. It's like, oh, triggered, and it's like a joke, but triggers are real, and like I use that word so much because I'm becoming more aware of them. And so essentially, for people listening, triggers are just anything that happens, or maybe something that is said, or a situation you're in that triggers your anxiety or depression or mental health. Yeah, so it's just something that you try to avoid or try to manage because you're aware of it. I don't know if you have anything to add to what a trigger is, but I mean, it literally can be anything. Every day I'm like, oh, yep, that's a trigger for me. Like, you just find something new every day. But back to the question, what does anxiety feel like? How do you recognize it? And the differences between anxiety and depression. Oh, yeah, that plays into like my answer. So yeah, I'm very in tune with my triggers as of late, you know, like I didn't know I had anxiety before, so I couldn't recognize those triggers. And so usually I know what I'm getting into. So if it's a situation that I can't prevent, I at least know that, okay, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm going to be with people that I don't know. I have to be prepared for this. And like a good example of that is last night. I already told Brittany this, but last night I went out with some coworkers, and I know my coworkers, but I only started the job like 2 months ago. Yeah. So I don't really know them. And I've only been out with one of them I'd never hung out with. One of them I only hung out with one time. And then the other one, Rihanna, is like a good friend of mine. And I was so anxious. So they all went to a comedy show before, but I didn't go to the comedy show. And so I was meeting them after. And so I already felt like I was tagging along to like their pre-made plans, and like it was kind of an afterthought. And I don't know, like I wasn't part of their group already. So that gave me anxiety. And then like just getting there, and then they're all like talking and everything, and I was kind of feeling isolated and alone, and isolation, I've said this I feel like a million times on my podcast, that isolation is a trigger for me. So I was just feeling like very ignored, but like I knew I was getting into that situation, so I could have just not gone, but I chose to kind of just like push through it because I wanted to like go out and have fun and hang out with them. So going back to what we were saying before, there's different types of anxiety. And so I just wrote down different ones for me, which there's so many more than what I wrote down. But anxiety of the unknown, like not knowing what people are thinking about you or a situation, or like creating those scenarios in your head of what can go wrong. An example of that for me is like dates give me anxiety, because especially blind dates, like from a dating app, because I don't know if they really look like their picture. Yeah. I don't know, are they going to be at the bar first? Am I going to be at the bar first?
I think that's why I'm always late to things, because I don't want to be there first.
Yeah, no, I feel that. And it's just like, I'm thinking literally of every single thing that can go wrong. So that's like the anxiety of the unknown for me, is like, are we going to have stuff to talk about? Is it going to be short? Am I going to like immediately not want to be there? How do I get out of it? Yeah. So that kind of anxiety for me is like those racing thoughts, and then kind of like a panic, and then like a pit in your stomach. Sometimes I'll get like sweaty palms, or just like start freaking out, which kind of leads into the next step, is like a panic attack that can happen if you like think about those things too much, and there's just like a lot coming in at once. Then it turns into a panic attack, which is just like hyperventilating, rapid breathing. For me, I pace a lot because I feel like I can't control my body, but I control like where, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know why I pace. I don't know. Is that a common thing?
I bounce my leg.
Okay.
At work, I bounce my leg for probably 6 of the 8 hours that I'm there.
Yeah. So, pacing in a panic attack, I just like cannot stop crying, and I feel like I'm about to pass out. Like I literally feel like I'm going into death. Like, and I don't wish a panic attack on anybody. No, ever.
Never.
But it's extremely hard.
It's so scary.
Yeah, and it's hard to explain it, because if you've never had a panic attack, there's nothing like it. Yeah. There's like not a situation that is comparable to what it is. And I just like, the last one I had was like in October when I was dating the last guy, because dating is a trigger for me. And I just like went in, and stress is also a huge factor in it. And at that time I was unemployed, and there's just like a lot of factors that I was thinking about at once. And I just remember texting literally every last person that was in my text, and I was like, I'm having a panic attack. I don't know what to do. And like people were calling me and everything, but then it's like, I can't talk to you. Like I literally cannot form words, and it's just terrifying. So there's that kind of anxiety. And then the anxiety that I can't talk about that much because I will freak out, but is about death, because it's inevitable. And that kind of anxiety is like a tightness in your chest and a sinking feeling. And this is the best way that I could think about explaining it, but like it feels like all of your nerves are like floating away from your body, and you become like lightheaded, and there's like pins and needles everywhere. I don't know how to explain it, but when I think about death, it's like everything's just like sucked out of me. Yeah. Kind of. Yeah. Because you can't prevent it. And anxiety in general has to be manageable, and it's manageable and not treatable. Yep. And I have not even, I've told my therapist that I'm scared of death, but we have not. There's literally so much that I need to talk about in therapy, and we only have 50 minutes and
that's the
a
worst.
week. And so I'm like, and sometimes in therapy, I'm just like, this is what I am freaking out about this week. So we can't even like go back to freaking high school where everything started. And it's literally, I'll be in therapy for the rest of my life. Like, which is good. I love therapy.
There's nothing wrong with therapy.
Yeah. But it's just like, it takes a lot. Like, we have not touched on death at all. And that's one of the things that I really need to freaking buckle down and manage, because if anyone brings it up, which is weird because I love true crime stuff, but I like just dissociate from it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, but anyway, so depression and anxiety are just like complete opposites. I can identify them because they're different, but like, I guess the easiest way to explain it is like, for me, depression is like a slow paced environment where like everything slows down. You don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to do anything. You're just like very emotionless and empty and just having very like sad thoughts. And then anxiety is very high intensity, fast paced, like everything's happening at once. Your heart is racing. You can, I don't know, it's like very in the moment, and depression's very long and slow and drawn out.
It's a very good way of describing it.
Yeah. I don't really know what an example of them being similar and like not being able to tell the difference of them would be.
I mean, I don't think they're similar at all. Like,
same.
But like they feed off of each other. That's like the only way I can think of like how they're intertwined, because like anxiety can cause depression, depression can cause anxiety, and it's just, they're like Bonnie and Clyde basically. They just are like this, fingers crossed there.
And I think one thing to tell people if they're kind of wondering like if they have anxiety or depression is usually they do come in pairs. Like usually if you have depression, you have anxiety, and vice versa. There are cases where you have one and not the other, because both my sisters have anxiety, but they don't, as far as I know, they don't struggle with depression, at least not as much as I do.
Yeah.
Or I have. So there are cases where you don't have both, but like if you're depressed, then you most likely have anxiety.
Yeah.
But yeah, my anxiety, if I'm really like anxious for a couple of days, then like 3 days later I'll be in a low. So I'm expecting a low next week, because I've been anxious for like the past 24 hours.
I'm sorry for you.
It's okay. Like, I know it's coming. Yeah. So what does anxiety feel like for you?
Anxiety for me, so some of the like physical symptoms are like, one, my palms are, I don't think my hands are ever dry. They're always sweaty. Like I mentioned, I bounce my leg a lot. Like, it's just my way.
Which you're doing it right now.
I know.
And it's kind of stressing me out, because I know that you have anxiety, so I'm like, oh my gosh, she's bouncing her legs.
I know. And like when I was being diagnosed with anxiety, like I was waiting in the doctor's room, and my doctor came in, and he was like, well, I'm here to see you about anxiety, and I can tell that you are very anxious because your leg is bouncing. And I looked down and I was like, I didn't even know I was doing that. And he was like, yeah, most people don't.
Yeah, which is actually a good tell, because like at work, I'll be like bouncing my leg, and then I realize I'm doing it, and I'm like, am I anxious? And like kind of makes you analyze your state of mind in the moment.
It definitely does. But those are some of the physical things. I also play with my hair a lot. Like, that's something I do when I'm anxious. My panic attacks are like, they're triggered by social situations for sure. But I have had multiple panic attacks where like, for example, I was making muffins one day, and out of nowhere, my heart started beating really fast, and I started freaking out, and then like I started hyperventilating, and I couldn't breathe, so I had to call my mom, and she had to like just calm me down and tell me to breathe. And that's one of the things that I struggle with the most during my attacks, is it's hard to explain. Like you're saying, I am so out of the moment of where I am, because I'm freaking out to the point where I can't remember how to breathe. And
yeah, that's the thing, is I think you're focused so much on surviving because you think you're going to die, that you don't realize like what's going on around you, because you're trying to remember how to do basic things that your body does by itself usually. And like a lot of the times I just have to like close my eyes, and then I don't think I've ever been able to
talk myself out of a panic attack, I always have to call someone, whether it's my mom or my brother or anyone that knows how to calm me down. Another example, I was at work and we had to introduce ourselves, and before it was my turn, I could literally see my heart beating through my shirt. Like my shirt was moving because my heart was beating so hard and fast. And when I started talking, like my voice was shaky. It sounded like I had just been crying, and we were supposed to say these certain things in a row, and I forgot like 2 of them. And then afterwards I was like, oh yeah, and this, oh, and also this. And yeah, so that's kind of what anxiety is. And it's, I mean, yeah, you have your triggers, but then for me, there are just times where you're not expecting it, and it just happens. There's also, like when I worked at a grocery store, there was a guy going through the checkout line who just, like, that must have been one of his triggers of shopping or something, but he just had a full-on panic attack, and we had to like put him in our back room so he could calm down. We gave him some water, and it took him probably about 15 minutes until he was like fully okay to leave.
It does come out of nowhere sometimes, where it's like it's not really coming out of nowhere, but it seems like that. Like,
yeah,
when you were talking about your muffin situation, I remember that same time. It was probably like a week before I actually had my panic attack. I was in my kitchen. So at that time, I cleaned my kitchen probably like 5 times a day, because that's like a coping mechanism for me. And I was unemployed. I literally had nothing to do all day, and I was like dating Eric, and I would just be waiting all day for him to text me back, which, like, that's where the trigger comes into play. I remember standing in the kitchen, and I was starting to pace, and I didn't even realize it, and I was just like pacing back and forth. I started feeling like lightheaded, and I was breathing like a lot heavier, and I was like, oh my God, I'm like, is this going to be a panic attack? And then I started freaking, that makes you freak out more. And then I'm just like, okay, I just have to shower, because showering is a coping mechanism. So I just like jumped in the shower, and I was like, and I was fine. And then the next week, I think, is when I actually had like the full blown panic attack, but that was after like Eric stopped talking to me and stuff. So yeah, it just like comes out of nowhere. And it was because I was like waiting for Eric to text me back or whatever, and then it just snaps, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is, what helps with anxiety? Like medication, self-love, meditation, whatever. So it's very different for everybody. And I kind of talked about this earlier about medication. I don't take medication for anxiety because I actually thought that I was on medication. Like, I thought Wellbutrin was for both. And like, I have thought this since forever. Like, I've always thought that. And then I was talking to my therapist, like, she asked me what I was taking or something, and I told her, and she's like, like, that's really weird, because I don't think I'm pretty sure it's just for depression, not anxiety. And I was like, that would make sense, because it has not been helping my anxiety at all. And I just like have never, just moving up to Salt Lake, it's very hard to like find all new doctors and stuff. So I haven't found a new doctor, haven't even tried getting on medication for anxiety, but I highly recommend everybody to do that. So yeah, that made a lot more sense, that because I remember even texting my sister, like, my medication is not helping my anxiety at all. And she's like, you really need to switch medication. But it turns out it wasn't even for anxiety. So, and then I've tried CBD oil, which I love. Like, I was very hesitant about it at first, because I'm like, is this weed? Like, I don't know, like, but it doesn't have, well, there's both kinds. So, my therapist recommended it to me, so it's so expensive.
Yeah.
So I went and got like a little bottle for like $50, and yeah,
Yikes.
but it lasted me like 3 months, I think.
Oh, that's nice.
Because it's like a dropper. So I did 1 drop in the morning and 3 at night, and it helped me sleep a lot better. And it calmed me down, but then I was unemployed. So I had to stop because I couldn't afford it. So I'm not on it right now, but I know that there's like CBD oil pills that work instantly, because with the oil, you have to like, it takes a couple of days
your body has to absorb it. And
and there's like gummies and stuff like that, but I recommend, if you have anxiety, to try it. And then the number one thing that helps me is self-care, and which I've mentioned is like I take showers all the time and just like listening to music, going on walks, driving up the mountains. The mountains are like a huge escape for me just because it's like fresh air. No one's there to bother me. Like even if you go somewhere where there's no service, or you turn off your phone and you're just like kind of disconnected to like recharge. Yeah, and I usually go up and like take pictures and do that stuff. And then I was gonna say naps, because in the past, naps are usually like, I'm feeling depressed, so I'm gonna sleep, or feeling anxious, so I'm gonna sleep. But lately, naps have been triggers for me.
Oh no.
And it sucks. Like I cannot nap because
That really sucks.
I have anxiety. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just like anxiety that I won't be able to sleep later, or that I'm going to take a nap for too long, or I'm going to not fulfill like my responsibilities that day, whatever it is. Watching like TV and shows, and a huge thing is just like keeping your mind busy and keeping yourself busy, so then you can't like wander off and think of all these scenarios, which is why around October was so hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I had nothing to do, like
Yeah.
literally nothing. And I would just sit on my couch. Like I watched all the shows on Netflix.
Yeah.
Like I had nothing to do. So, and then like I said earlier, my therapist says that anxiety isn't treatable, it's only manageable, which sounds very discouraging. Like, oh, I'm gonna have anxiety forever. But I mean, yeah, like it's
Well, yeah.
it's true. But also like it becomes more manageable, especially when you like discover your triggers and coping mechanisms. Another thing I was going to ask you, well, I'll say mine first, but like, do you have any like physical coping mechanisms where, because you can notice like when your leg is shaking or playing with your hair, but do you do anything like what I do? I like rub my collarbone and like it's like a comfort thing for me. And so like if I'm really anxious, pretty much anybody out there, you'll know I'm anxious because I'm rubbing my collarbone. But I don't know why, it just like soothes me. And like sometimes I'm just like talking to people, and then people are like, are you like
Are you okay?
are you like, do you have a rash or something? And I'm like, what? Like I don't even notice that I do it. I just do it. But yeah, so like I'm just curious if that's normal. Like you have like a physical thing that you do.
I honestly don't think I have something that calms me down. Like the closest thing I can think is me shaking my leg. Like that's how I like put out my anxious energy.
maybe it is the same thing, or it's just like it, because it doesn't necessarily calm me down. Well, I don't know what it is. I don't even know how I started doing that.
I think it just, I mean, I feel like for me, it's part of it is because I am anxious, but it's also kind of for you, like it's soothing. Like it's not something that's like as nice as like rubbing a spot on your arm or like your collarbone, but it essentially does the same thing. Yeah.
But basically, you just have to find like what works for you, which I've said in literally every episode, is like do whatever makes you happy. But I do think self-care and like self-love is a huge thing with anxiety, because you're just taking care of yourself and focusing more on you than like things that affect you. If that makes sense. And then of course therapy is like a giant thing that I think everyone should be in therapy. And I do have a friend who had a bad experience with therapy, and it makes me so sad because like I don't know. I think therapy, if you find the right therapist, and I don't know, it just helps so much. And even just them validating you. Like I love that my therapist validates me. Like even talking about guys, I talk about guys are just like, or dating is such a prominent thing right now for me, that like I just go in and say, even little crushes I have or something, I tell her, and she's like, that's completely normal, all the things that you're feeling. And because I feel crazy when I'm like talking about it. I'm like, I'm crazy. I'm like focusing on these little things that don't matter. She's like, that's completely normal. So therapy just like, if anything, validates that what you're going through and what you're feeling is normal. that's it for me, and that's like what helps me.
Yeah, I am agreeing with you on the self-care aspect. I think for me that's probably the most important thing. Like I said, when I was in a really low place, and I got my dog, I wasn't taking care of myself, but then because of her, I kind of had to. Like, I had to get up in the morning to take her out, and I had to get out of bed. And so she definitely helped kickstart that self-care kind of thing. I would also drive up into the canyon. I probably did that 4 times a week and set up my hammock and just played guitar while Millie ran around in the river and whatnot.
And I think getting outside in general helps because
it's just
like you're getting sun and I don't know, it just like gives you energy, I guess.
Yeah, the hard part is just actually getting
out.
Going out.
Yeah.
Like I've said before, I also take medication, and I think that so many people are opposed to the thought because they're like, oh, I don't want to like be different and I don't want to feel like a zombie. And sometimes the medication will do that, but you have to find the one that works for you.
Doesn't do that.
Yeah, like we're both on different medications for depression, but they both work well for our situation, I guess. And like I had to go through probably 5 or 6 different medications until I found the one that was actually, I felt made a difference, but didn't make me just like not myself.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, if you're on medication and you don't feel like yourself, then it's not the medication for you.
Exactly. It's really stressful when you first start because like
it's
chances are the first one you try, it may not be the right one for you, and you can't tell until like a month in. So it's a long process because you have to give it a lot of time to make or realize how it actually makes you feel. But yeah, so it's interesting that you say therapy is, like, I agree therapy is wonderful. Like, I was so grateful for the first time I went to therapy because that helped tremendously. Since then, I have tried therapy 3 different times, and all 3 have been bad experiences.
Yeah. Because this is my 3rd therapist. It just makes a difference with when you find the right one.
That is very true. I wish I could go back to the one that I had when I was
14.
14
yeah. But like, what were your bad experiences, if you want to share?
Well, one of them, so the last one I had, I usually go to therapy after breakups because
Same.
I know.
Same.
But it's mainly because I like, probably like you, go into a really, really bad low. And it's almost impossible for me to get out of it unless I talk to someone about like how I'm feeling about the whole situation. But so the last one I had, I mean, there's nothing really wrong with her. Like, so the first time I went and saw her, I went to, my sister-in-law worked at the place that I went to, and I was freaking out because I had no idea where to go. There were like 5 different buildings, and I just so happened to walk into the building that my sister-in-law was working in. And I went up to the window and I just started bawling my eyes out because I was stressing out so bad. And she like came out and like hugged me, and she's like, "It's okay, you're fine. Like, I'll walk you over there." And I walked into the room and I just like full on started having a panic attack because it was scary for me to be there. I don't know. Like I said, she didn't do anything wrong. I just don't think she was like the right one for me. And then there was this one was bad. This one, I went and saw this guy when I was going to SUU, and he was down in St. George, and like my mom had set up the appointment. She said that she had heard really good things about him and that it should be good. So I went down there, and he made me feel so uncomfortable. Like he would say things like, "You shouldn't have any problem with boys. Like you're a good looking girl." And I was just like, "You can't say that to me. You're my therapist."
Yeah.
And it would like, I just never like, he made me feel kind of like creepy, uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other one, like the first one, like just wasn't a good fit.
I think when I do my triggers mini-sode, I'm also going to talk about therapy, and like, because I've had people text me like, how do you find a therapist, and I think it's good to like talk about it, because I've actually had a therapist break up with me before and that hurts. Okay.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. She like told me, she was like, we shouldn't see each other anymore. And I was like, what? You're my therapist. I didn't think that that could happen. And it was because like you, every time I've started therapy, it's been after a boy.
Yeah.
The first time I went to therapy was actually, it wasn't a boy, but it was a relationship with my friend that I talked about in the first episode. Yeah. But I went to her a couple times, and her room was just like very dark. I just remember it being very dark, and it was very cluttered. Like, she collected everything Coca-Cola. So like her room was just like a novelty shop. It looked like. Goodness. So that already was uncomfortable to me. And then every single time I went, she was like, oh, and who is that again? And like, why are like,
was she not taking notes?
No. And like, it was so bizarre to me, and it was so frustrating. I basically had to retell the traumatic thing that happened to me over and over and over and over, and we couldn't ever get anywhere because I was always retelling.
That's so annoying.
Yeah. And I'm just like, why don't you remember this? Like, I understand you have other patients, and like a million people are telling you a million different things, but like, you should take notes and review before my session. Yeah. And so I only went to her a couple of times because I was like, this isn't doing anything for me. It's making me more angry. And then the second time was after my breakup with my first college boyfriend. And I went to LDS Family Services, and I started with a guy, and was telling him all these things, and he just, I just like didn't like him. I didn't feel comfortable with him. He wasn't like creepy, but he was just say things, and I'm like, I don't believe that. And like kind of like, you're saying things that are like your opinion, and I don't believe that, and it's not helping me. So then I switched to a girl, and I saw her for like a couple of weeks. She always like talked about herself, which I understand what she was doing. She was like saying, I went through this, and this is how I got through it, blah, blah, blah. And then she would like give me so me and my mom had this big fight a couple years ago, and so I was going through therapy for it, and she was like, you should write a letter to your mom saying like all these things that you feel. And it was recent. Like, had only been a couple months since that happened. And I was just like, no, I'm not ready to like tell her any of that stuff. Yeah. And then the next session, she was like, did you write the letter? And I was like, no. And then she's like, okay, well, I can't help you if you don't help yourself. And this isn't helping you at all, so I don't think that we should like meet anymore. And I was like, what? You can't force someone to like be ready to confront their anxiety or whatever.
Yeah, you would think that she would suggest like other things, like smaller steps you could take up to that.
Like, write the letter and don't send it. Or try to reach out, because me and my mom weren't talking very much at that time. So like, she could have been like, just send your mom a text. I don't know. It was very weird, and it makes you feel like crap. Wow, my therapist doesn't even want to listen to me. Yeah. So yeah, I've definitely had bad experiences, but you just like have to keep trying, and I'll talk about what I did to like find my therapist in another episode, but I just think people should keep trying.
Yeah. I think I am kind of lucky in that like my family are my therapists.
Right,
like, I tell my mom absolutely everything. But then like one of my sister-in-laws, she worked for a troubled teens youth center, so she understands like all of that, and she also struggles with depression. And then the sister-in-law that I was talking about earlier, she works at a eating disorder facility, and so she knows all about like mental health and different triggers and different ways to cope with what you're dealing with. So I got really lucky in the family department. But yeah, therapy is definitely something that everyone should consider and try if you feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah,
and you're gonna feel uncomfortable at first.
Yeah,
because,
I literally have anxiety every time before a session.
Yeah, it's weird like opening up to a stranger about your personal life. It's hard to keep in mind that they're only there to help. Like, they want the best for you, and they want to make sure that at the end of each session you feel better, and like you're not as stressed or worried, or like a weight basically is lifted off your shoulders. So,
right, exactly.
yeah, it's definitely something everyone should consider.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to add?
I just want people to know that if they're ever struggling with suicide or having a really down day, the suicide hotline number is 1-800-273-8255. And don't ever be ashamed if you feel like you need to call that number. That's what they're there for. So just remember to love yourself and take care of yourself.
And I talked to my therapist a lot about my podcast, and she, just because this is kind of like a tangent, but the podcast has actually been affecting my mental health a lot, and I don't realize it. And like the last few weeks have been like extremely hard for me, but I cannot pinpoint why, because I'm not depressed, not necessarily anxious. It's just been really weird. And so we're just like in therapy, we're just always analyzing like what is it and how to manage it. But I was talking to her about my depression episode and how like I was just very like nervous for how people would respond if it ever got like a serious response where it's like, I'm not qualified to help you in this situation or whatever it is. So she gave me the number for the crisis, interventional, and hospital diversion. That's what this says. I don't know what that means, but it's at the University of Utah, and it's basically just a crisis line, but it's more local. And that number is 801-587-3000. It says to provide free crisis response and hospital diversion programs that aim to keep all of our family members, friends, and neighbors safe. It says our team of professionals are highly trained in mental health crisis management and suicide prevention. So it's the same as the suicide hotline, I'm assuming, but it's just more local.
Yeah.
So there is that number as well.
I think that's funny that, well, it's not funny, but interesting you say that the podcast is affecting your mental health, because when I was doing my BFA shows, and I was making those posters and doing my research, it affected me 100%. And there were times that I would be working on it and I would just like start crying, because it's a hard thing to comprehend how people actually are feeling when they deal with this stuff.
Yeah. And it's just like very overwhelming, because it's like, I feel this way, I'm talking about this way, you're talking about it that way, but then there's like a million other people that are listening to it. And I think I just get very like, well, what if everyone listening doesn't feel like I feel, or doesn't experience it like I'm experiencing it? And I don't know, it's a lot of things, but it's definitely affected me more than I thought it would.
You mentioned something. I think it's very, very important for people to keep in mind, or for everyone to keep in mind, that every situation is different.
Yes.
So like the things that we talk about today, maybe like some of these things may have nothing to do with how you have anxiety or you have depression, but these situations are how we have dealt with it and how we recognize that we have it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. My therapist is running this podcast, okay? But she suggested that I put a disclaimer in my episodes. Yeah. This is the end of the episode, but basically a disclaimer just saying like, me and Brittany are not trained in any of this. Like, this is just two people talking about our experiences and what works for us. Yeah. So like, take it with a grain of salt. Try some of the things we recommend, but like, it's not guaranteed to work, especially since everything is so situational, and we're not trained in this. We've only experienced it. We haven't like researched and done crazy school for it or anything.
Yeah. We're definitely not licensed professionals.
Yeah.
But we did our best. So.
Yeah, we did our best. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
No, I think that is it.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences. I think it's fun for me to not just sit here by myself talking about it, and where like we can bounce off ideas and experiences off of each other, because things that you say spark something in me that I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize until 1 second ago that that's anxiety, you know, like, stuff like that. So yeah, so thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And also just thank you for everybody for listening. I am going to say, please write a review for my show. Reviews help me a lot. I went from like number 300 on the chart to like number 230 just from like 4 people writing reviews.
That's awesome.
So yeah, even if you just listen to one episode, this episode, just quickly write a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you can write a review on my podcast. And then my social media for the podcast is, for Instagram, it's at Sometimes in Shambles. For Twitter, it's at ShamblesPod, Pod. And then my email is sometimesinshambles@gmail.com. Oh yeah, what I was going to say earlier is, do you want to, you can like share your socials or also your website so people can like look at the stuff that we're talking about.
I'll mention my website. The easiest way to find it is to go to my design website, which is briidesign.com. So BRIII, then the word design. And then you can go to the graphic design section. It'll take you to the anxiety one that I did. And then in the description, there should be a link that goes to the depression website, which is like an actual website published and stuff. So yeah, check it out because there are really cute illustrations and stuff.
Yeah, they're really cool. Brittany is a really good designer. Yeah, so that is it. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Sometimes in Shambles. The intro music was done by my friend Lucas Cathy, and the artwork was done by me, myself, Melissa. If you liked this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.